As the new millennium dawned, one question still haunts the American psyche. Who killed John F. Kennedy? Like Pearl Harbor for their parents, or 9/11 for their children, the Kennedy assassination carved a permanent wound into a generation's collective memory. Time didn't just stop. It collapsed into grief, confusion, and conspiracy.
In the years that followed, 1,000 theories rose up, each one twisted by politics, paranoia, or pain, but none gave closure. For the average American, it was a maddening exercise in futility. Author January Jones was no expert, just a widow with 2 small children asking the same questions we all did. Her husband died a violent death. She had stood in the same dark place. She understood the cost of unanswered loss. Was it political? A coup? A global conspiracy? Jones didn't think so. The facts didn't line up. The policies didn't shift. The party stayed in power. It wasn't war. It wasn't government. It was something else. Jones proposed a theory as old as history itself, a love triangle. Not politics, passion. One man's ruthless desire for another man's wife. She discovered this theory more than 30 years ago, after years of research, the old-fashioned way in libraries, before the internet was available. There are over 40 pages of notes and bibliographies that verify her theory. Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, the world's most elegant woman, was not, as many believed, wealthy. And then came Onassis, Greek shipping tycoon, ruthless empire builder, collector of art, oil, and people. On their wedding day, Jackie received $5 million in cash, hers, no strings attached. It was her first real money. Jones didn't claim to solve the mystery. She simply followed the oldest motive in the book: love, lust, and money. Was it grief or guilt? Justice or performance? 60 years is a long, long time. This theory actually names the shooter. It is not Oswald. It is a story about who stood to gain. So, who was the man who seduced a grieving first lady and stepped into the void left by a murdered president? To understand Aristotle Onassis is to understand power, not the kind earned in elections, but the kind amassed in shadows. Born in Turkey, Onassis was a master of reinvention. He rose from a telephone operator in Argentina to one of the world's richest men. The official story was business brilliance. The hidden story? Smuggling, narcotics, and weapons. He needed distribution. Global, discreet, untraceable. Oil tankers were the perfect front. His empire flourished under the guise of energy transport. Joseph P. Kennedy, then head of the U.S. Maritime Commission, sold Liberty ships to Onassis illegally. 2 ambitious patriarchs, Kennedy and Onassis, had made a deal. Their dynasties would become fatally intertwined. November 1963. As John F. Kennedy lay in state in the East Room, Onassis, a man JFK had explicitly banned from the U.S., was inside the White House as Jackie's personal guest. The man, once considered too toxic to enter America, was now a guest of honor in the nation's most sacred house of mourning. Their affair, Jones believed, began before Dallas.
If your husband were out of the picture, would I have a chance?
And so the triangle was drawn: Jack, Jackie, and Ari.
On the day of JFK's death, Jackie and Ari had perfect alibis. She was in the car, he was in Germany. But the proximity only raised more questions for Jones. For him?
Who invites a potential lover to the funeral and into the home of the man he allegedly despised? Who sits beside the widow as her husband is laid to rest, unless something deeper ties them together?
She believed this wasn't a random conspiracy or a Cold War cover-up. It was personal, it was planned, and most chilling of all, it was perfect.
After Dallas, the world watched Jackie Kennedy vanish into grief. a widow at 34, a mother of 2. Her public silence became a shrine. But behind closed doors, her soul had been split, and someone quietly stepped in to mend the pieces. She didn't trust many people, but Bobby, Robert F. Kennedy, was different. Not just her brother-in-law, he was her shield, her conscience, her confessor. They were united by grief and by guilt. Both had supported Jack into politics. Both had lost him violently. In each other, they saw the only person who could possibly understand. Friends whispered, reporters hinted. But the bond was real, deeper than family, stronger than convention. They were careful, but not invisible. America watched with longing and suspicion. Was it scandal or salvation?
On to Chicago, and let's win there.
Lightning struck twice. Bobby Kennedy, her kindred spirit, her protector, was gunned down just feet from victory. In that moment, Jackie lost the last person who truly knew her sorrow. She had been devoured by history, twice, and she was done. Ari offered something no one else could: security, a fortress, a place to disappear. It wasn't love. It was sanctuary. She agreed to marry Ari, but on her terms, $5 million up front, another $20 million upon his death, a lifestyle for silence. She had been America's queen. Now she was a business arrangement. In Ari, she found escape and affection. And as Jones believed, perhaps Ari found what he always wanted: control and the crown jewel. To understand the perfect crime, you must understand the perfect cover. And for Jackie Kennedy, the real enemy was not just the man who murdered her husband, but the system that buried the truth. She had been inside the belly of power. She knew what secrets looked like. And after Dallas, those secrets were all around her. 1 bullet, 3 wounds, 2 men. That's what they told the American people. But Jackie had seen it with her own eyes, and she knew they were lying. Privately, Jackie said it wasn't Oswald. Not alone. She spoke of a shadow government, of betrayal. She feared for her children, and so she said nothing. She left behind tapes, sealed, and sent her children away to protect them. Onassis wasn't just a businessman. He was an operator. His ships were flagged in Panama. His crews spoke in code. His deals weren't just about oil. He was well connected to the most unsavory people in the world. CIA ties linked him to arms deals, bribes, and covert espionage. There is no doubt Onassis could easily have ordered the assassination of anyone, anywhere, at any time in the world, without being implicated in any way by anybody. The Warren Commission was never told about John Suetra, a trained OAS terrorist capable of assassination who was in Dallas on November 22, 1963. Suetra and his accomplices were detained, then 48 hours later were expelled to Canada, never to be seen again. Information that was conveniently concealed until 1977, after Aristotle Onassis had died in 1975. According to Jones, Jackie didn't marry Ari out of love. She married him out of fear and strategy. He had power. He had protection. And most importantly, he had the motive to keep her silent. Her silence was purchased. And for a time, she disappeared. The enemy was not just a gunman, not just a smuggler, not just a broken marriage or a new one. The enemy was a system that chose comfort over truth, appearances over accountability. The real enemy was denial. In the wake of a national tragedy, 2 children were left behind. Caroline and John Jr., heirs to a shattered Camelot. They didn't just lose a father, they lost a country that once believed in fairy tales. After JFK's assassination, Jackie became obsessed with one thing: protecting the children.
They took Jack. They won't take my babies.
She built a fortress. She refused interviews. She moved to Manhattan. She chose isolation over risk. To Onassis, they were part of the package, but never part of the plan. He resented their presence. He feared their fame would eclipse his own. He had his father's smile, his mother's grace, and the weight of a nation's expectations. John Jr. was never allowed to be ordinary. Every step was watched, every misstep magnified. The boy who once saluted his father's coffin vanished into the sea. Another Kennedy gone, another chapter closed. Memorial service was at sea. Jackie had died 5 years earlier. Jones believed John Jr. had begun asking questions about Ari, about Dallas, about the truth. And then, like his father, he disappeared. Power built the House of Onassis. Money fortified it. But in the end, even a titan like Ari couldn't outmaneuver fate. The myth of Onassis was global. The truth of Onassis was tragic. Ari had a son, Alexander, his golden boy, the future of the empire. But Alexander was restless. He hated the spotlight. He hated Jackie, and he didn't want the crown. Alexander's plane spun out. A routine flight, a catastrophic crash. He lingered in a coma. Ari flew in top surgeons, but it was too late. Ari never recovered, not emotionally, not financially. After Alexander's death, everything unraveled. Business deals fell apart. Investors fled. The Onassis fortune began to bleed. And Jackie? She began to pull away. Christina had always lived in the shadow of men. Her brother. Her father. Now she was alone and adrift. She battled depression, addiction, failed marriages, and the constant pressure to be a dynasty's last hope. She blamed Jackie, called her the Black Widow, said she had cursed the family. A stroke took Ari's speech. Pneumonia took his strength. And by 1975, the man who once ruled the seas died in silence after making his last confession to a priest. When the dust of tragedy settled, Jackie Kennedy Onassis emerged not just as a symbol of grace, but as one of the wealthiest women in the world. Some called it luck, others called it calculation, but to Jackie, it was survival. Jackie had signed a prenuptial agreement, but after Ari's death, she negotiated a new deal. In exchange for dropping all future claims, Jackie received $26 million, no questions asked. With her fortune secured, Jackie invested, not just in property, but in privacy. She created layers of trusts, shell companies, and private holding firms. She returned to work, not for money, but for identity. At Doubleday, she was not a widow, not a Kennedy. She was just Jackie O, the editor. In an age of tabloid confessions, Jackie remained silent. She understood the value of mystery, And in doing so, she controlled her own narrative. Jackie died in 1994. She left behind not just money, but control. Her estate passed quietly, her archives sealed, her secrets intact. She had been a queen without a crown, a wife without a husband, and in the end, a woman who outplayed them all. The story began with a gunshot in Dallas. It ends with a whisper, a trail of bodies, a fortune amassed, and a widow who walked away untouched. They called it a tragedy. But what if it was something else? What if it was the perfect crime? Jackie was humiliated, ignored, trapped in a marriage of optics. She once told a friend, "I'd rather be a widow than a divorcee." Ari had motive too. Oil deals stalled. JFK's policies hurt his empire. And he wanted Jackie. And Jackie? She needed protection. Ari had it. She never testified, never questioned the official story. Within a year, she was on Ari's yacht. A grieving widow or a woman reborn? Too many graves, too many secrets buried. Each death convenient, each story incomplete. Was it a lone gunman? A mafia hit? A coup? Or something more intimate? A betrayal not just of a man, but of a myth. If it was a crime, it left no fingerprints. Only whispers. Only questions. The unspeakable is spoken. This is another theory in a long line of theories that will make more sense than any other theory you have heard before. But one thing is certain. The only survivor was Jackie. She had all the money and was the last one standing.